A woman named Kemi tries to escape from a facility where some shady agents are experimenting on individuals who have been gifted with special powers. She eventually finds the building's exit, but before she heads out, one of the guards in the building shoots her down. She then gets dragged back in front of all the other inmates, who are shocked to see that one of them is dead. After this, the guards inform their boss, Ray, that the target has been killed, but he doesn't say anything. Elsewhere, a lady named Dion is walking to work when her boyfriend, Michael, suddenly drives a new car beside her. Dion is surprised to see the car, but Michael mentions that he got it for her.
Boyfriend's a lucky man.
Dion is shocked to hear this, and she also wonders how he could afford the car, but Michael says he has been saving up for it. Dion says he didn't have to do that for her, but she still thanks him and takes the car for a test drive.
Oh, sorry. You want to drive?
Elsewhere, a man named Andre arrives at a restaurant to see his son AJ, who is with his mom Aisha. Andre has just left prison after a few years, and he's trying to be there for his son, even though Aisha has already moved on from him. Before he sits with them, Aisha tells AJ to get his food from the counter so she can talk to Andre privately. As he leaves,
"Go get a refill, I need to talk to you, Dad."
Andre thanks Aisha for letting him see AJ again, but she seems more concerned about the money he's supposed to give her for their son's upkeep. Unfortunately, Andre doesn't have enough money to give her, and she threatens to take AJ out of the restaurant with her. Andre begs her not to do this, and he also promises to give her the money she needs when he gets paid at his new job. Despite initially refusing to listen to him, Aisha eventually leaves AJ with Andre. As she heads out, Andre looks happy to see his son, and he also gives him an expensive new phone.
Are we going?
AJ is shocked by this because he knows his dad doesn't have a lot of money, but Andre tells him not to worry about it. Later that night, a boy named Taser and his street gang enter a club to party. After a while, a girl named Veronica texts the leader of Taser's rival gang, Chucky, to inform him that Taser is at the club. Few minutes later, Chucky and his gang arrive and continuously bang on the club's door for Taser to come out.
Hey, come on!
Taser's boys quickly check what's happening outside, and as they realize that they are outnumbered, they tell Taser that they need to stay inside the club to avoid getting beaten or killed. However, Taser suddenly gets angry at some of the things Chucky is saying, so he storms out to confront him. Unfortunately, his boys run away, and Taser gets stabbed by Chucky. The rival gang then leaves the scene as the cops arrive, and Taser gets lucky to be helped by some of the club goers. The next morning, Michael resumes work and starts delivering packages to different houses in the area. As he delivers a package to a lady named Charlene, she seems to like him.
Hi.
But he doesn't even look at her. After he leaves, Charlene looks pissed and complains to her sister, Sabrina, about how Michael didn't even look at her. Sabrina just laughs at this and says she's already leaving for work. Elsewhere, Andre arrives at a call center where he works alongside his friend, John. After a good call session with one of his clients, Andre thanks John for helping him get the job, but his friend says he's just happy things turned out well. Shortly after, the call center's manager calls Andre to his office. When he gets there,
"I'll see you in my office, please."
the man mentions that he can no longer let Andre work at the company because of his criminal past, which has been discovered in the recent background check done by the company. Andre then storms out of the building, but John follows him to ask what happened. As he explains what happened, John feels sorry for him, but Andre is quite angry because losing his job might mean he'll never see AJ again. While they're talking, a boy named Rodney offers to sell drugs to them, but they say they're not interested. Rodney then sees Michael delivering a package nearby and approaches him.
Yes, it's a morning fresh package.
Even though Michael says he's not interested in buying drugs, Rodney tells him to at least take his number in case he needs some in the future. Michael then collects Rodney's number, but as the boy walks away, he clears it from his phone. After a while, Michael goes to see his friend, Gabriel, who owns a bar. As they start talking, Michael asks Gabriel to recommend a romantic restaurant in the area because he wants to take Dion there to propose to her. Gabriel looks happy about this, and he tells his friend about a fancy restaurant in the area.
I know the ones.
Meanwhile, Sabrina arrives at work and takes care of her first patient, who jokes about how she likes Sabrina's boyfriend, Kevin. After their session, Sabrina returns to the reception and attends to Taser's gang members, Screamer, Toozy, Tiny, and Dots, who are all there to see him. Sabrina tells them where to go, and
He's in room 109.
they eventually see that Taser wasn't hurt so badly. Even though he also says he's fine, Screamer doesn't seem to get why Taser went out to meet Chucky, even though they were outnumbered. He also asks if it's to prove that he's just as good as another gang leader named Crazy, who is now in jail. Taser says he just wants to take control of the estate from Chucky in Crazy's absence, and his boys agree to help him. Shortly after, Michael arrives at the hospital to see his mom, Tina, who is a sickle cell patient. As he's talking to her about his decision to propose to Dion, a lady named Victoria enters the room to speak to them. Michael has already met Victoria before,
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Michael.
and he tells his mom that the woman runs a sickle cell care facility. Victoria also gives Tina a leaflet and talks about her organization's goal of making sure sickle cell patients don't feel more pain than they're already used to. Tina and Michael are impressed with the details,
Look, these people, they understand sickle cell properly.
and Victoria tells them to take their time to read the leaflet and get back to her later. Elsewhere, Rodney meets his best friend, Spud, and gives him all the money he has made so far from selling drugs for the day. Rodney complains about how the pay isn't worth it, but Spud doesn't really pay attention to him. Meanwhile, a girl named Jasmine calls on any of the agents at the Shady facility to get her out of her cell because it's time for her planned call with her parents. However, no one answers her, and Jasmine looks sad.
I want to make my call!
Later that day, after Michael arrives at his apartment with Dion, she tells him about a case she's currently working on, which is about Jasmine, who has been reported missing by her family. Michael can't believe the girl hasn't been found yet, and Dion says it's also surprising. However, she mentions that as a social worker, she's going to eventually have to see Jasmine's parents regarding the case. After a while, Michael tells Dion that he'd like to take her on a date in a few days' time.
What's the occasion?
The next day, while Michael is about to deliver a package in one of the estates around, he's stopped by Taser's boys, who insist that he needs to pay them. Michael says he doesn't have any money, and Screamer punches him out of anger. Michael immediately punches him back, but as things escalate, Taser stabs him. His boys are shocked by this, but they quickly run away and leave Michael while he bleeds out. Before he dies, though, a light suddenly glows in his eyes, and he finds himself back in his van driving to Taser's estate. Michael thinks it's just deja vu, so he still drives to the estate to deliver the package. Interestingly, he gets stopped by Taser's boys, and as he spots Taser standing in the back, Michael looks scared. After the boys ask him for money, he begs them to leave him because he currently has no cash with him. Suddenly, Taser approaches him and decides to let him go because it's his first time in the area. Michael is relieved by this,
Next time, step correct.
Yeah.
but he can't seem to forget what he saw earlier. Elsewhere, Rodney gets an order from a client, but his car doesn't work, so he decides to take the bus. Unfortunately, the bus leaves before he gets to the bus stop, and as he tries to run after it, a weird light appears in his eyes. Suddenly, Rodney runs at full speed and eventually finds himself in the middle of nowhere.
Where am I?
As he then asks a woman walking on the road where he is, Rodney realizes that he has just run to Scotland all the way from England. Later that night, Andre gets a call from AJ, asking him if he'll be getting dinner on his way back from work. Andre says he'll buy something nice, but as he gets to the ATM, he realizes that he still hasn't been paid for the hours he worked at John's office. He immediately calls John to ask about this, but the number goes to voicemail.
This is John's phone. Leave a message.
As he gets angry, his eyes glow weirdly, and he punches the ATM. Surprisingly, the machine gets badly broken and drops all the money inside. Andre is shocked by this, and as he wonders whether to take the money, he's unaware that there's a camera watching him. Elsewhere, Kevin fails to pick up Sabrina for a scheduled date, so Charlene suggests going to his house to confirm if he really has an emergency situation to deal with, like he claimed. Sabrina doesn't think it's a good plan.
I'm fine. Can you just leave, please?
But Charlene says it won't hurt to just watch his house. When they get there, they eventually see that there's another girl in Kevin's house. Charlene tries to pick up a fight with the other girl, but Sabrina tells her to wait in the car. As Kevin then comes out of the house and blames Sabrina for coming to his house unannounced, she can't believe this, so she decides to return to her car. However, Kevin tries to stop her, but before he touches her, a weird light appears in her eyes. She then waves her hand back for Kevin to leave her, but she ends up throwing him to the door. Sabrina is shocked by this, and she wonders how she could have hurt him without even touching him. Elsewhere, Michael looks worried about what happened earlier, but he still proposes to Dion, who looks happy and accepts to be his wife. When they get home, Michael's eyes glow weirdly again, and he disappears right in front of Dion. Michael then finds himself in a place where he sees Taser, Sabrina, Andre, and Rodney waiting to get a signal from someone to fight a common enemy. As Michael wonders what's going on, he suddenly realizes that the person they're waiting for is someone who looks like him. Before he can say anything, his doppelganger appears in front of him, and as Michael asks who he is, he says he's from the future.
You're in the future.
Just then, some hooded guys come out of a portal to attack Rodney and the others. Before the fight starts, future Michael freezes time and takes his younger self to a cemetery. Younger Michael doesn't get this, and as he asks what's happening, his future self tells him that something sad will happen 3 months after his engagement. Michael says he just got engaged, and as he wonders what his future self is talking about, he sees a gravestone with Dion's name on it. Michael looks shocked to see this, and he says it's likely a mistake. However, his future self tells him that the fact he came to the future is a sign that he might be able to stop Dion from dying.
You can save her.
Michael gets nervous as he hears this, but his future self tells him the names of the others so he can start looking for them to help him defeat the guys in the hoods who he says are responsible for killing Dion. Meanwhile, Dion is shocked by Michael's sudden disappearance. As she walks around the house, though, Michael returns to the house and Dion asks what just happened. Michael tries calming her down.
Calm down, calm down, calm down.
But as she still seems quite terrified, he tells her that he's just coming from the future. Dion doesn't get this, but Michael picks up a piece of paper to write the names his future self told him, as well as the date Dion died. As Dion checks what he's writing, she looks confused and asks what's going on, but Michael says that everything will be all right. Later that night, Michael is unable to sleep, so he goes to meet Gabriel to tell him what he saw. Gabriel doesn't seem to believe what he's saying.
Tell Dion what, bro?
So he tells Michael to show off his powers. Unfortunately, Michael's powers don't work, so Gabriel tells him not to take what he saw seriously. Elsewhere, Rodney tries to run back to England, but his powers don't work, so he gets someone to give him some money to take a train home. Meanwhile, Kevin is still unconscious on the floor, and Sabrina tries to help him. After Kevin slowly regains consciousness, Sabrina heads home with Charlene, who is proud of what her sister did to her cheating boyfriend, even though she doesn't know what happened exactly. In the morning, Sabrina tells Charlene that she actually threw Kevin to the door. She also adds that she did it without touching him, but Charlene doesn't believe her sister is capable of something like that.
Do you hear what you're saying?
Elsewhere, Andre arrives home with all the money he took from the ATM. As he drops it all on his bed, he looks quite happy because he'll now have some money to take care of AJ. Later in the day, Andre takes AJ shopping, and after they're done, he sees his son talking to a gangster named Braggs and his friends. Andre doesn't like this, and he immediately interrupts their conversation just as Braggs is giving AJ his number. After Braggs leaves, Andre tells AJ not to hang out with gangsters because they'll only put him in trouble.
Who are those guys?
Following this, AJ deletes Braggs' number and promises to stay away from trouble. Meanwhile, Veronica sends a video to Toozy to confirm Chucky and his gang's current location. Even though Screamer doesn't think it will be a good idea to leave without a plan, Taser leads his boys to ambush Chucky. However, he realizes that it's a setup and all his boys run away. Unfortunately, Taser gets cornered into a parking lot and Chucky says he'll finally kill his rival.
I ain't the one that's trapped.
Before he can do anything, though, Taser brings out his knife and turns invisible. Chucky and his boys are shocked, but before they escape, Taser cuts some of them with his knife. As Chucky is also about to leave, Taser kills him and becomes visible again to Screamer, who looks extremely terrified of what he just saw. Before he says anything, though, Taser tells him that they need to leave before the cops show up. As they then leave, they're unaware that some people are watching them from a camera near the area.
Let's go before the feds come.
Elsewhere, Rodney tries to explain what happened to Spud, but his friend doesn't believe him. As Rodney still insists that he ran to Scotland, Spud tells him to do it again. However, his powers don't work, so Spud leaves him and heads into a nearby store. While Rodney waits outside for him, he sees a cop about to drop a parking ticket on his car. Rodney quickly runs toward the cop to tell him to stop, but his powers return, and he runs to another part of England. This makes Rodney smile, so he speeds back to stop the cop from dropping the parking ticket. Later that day, Taser goes to see Screamer in his house to explain what happened. Screamer then asks if Taser is a human, and he says he is. He also adds that he discovered his powers about a week ago while looking at himself in a mirror. Screamer believes this, and he also seems excited when he sees Taser using his powers again. Following this, Taser tells Screamer that with Chucky gone, he wants his gang to now deal drugs on a massive level. Screamer thinks it's risky, but Taser says they'll use his new powers to operate. Shortly after, Taser meets with the rest of his gang members to show them his powers. They're all shocked at first, though they eventually get excited to see what Taser can do. He then tells them about his plan to take over the streets with Chucky gone, and his gang members agree with him.
That's why we need to jump on that.
They then decide to use Tiny's cousin to get a gangster named Masher to sell drugs to them. Elsewhere, Dion leaves work early because she couldn't stop thinking about what Michael told her. Michael then tells her not to worry about it because he no longer has powers. Dion is still worried by this, so she suggests taking a walk to the park. When they get there, Dion notices that he looks bothered, so she asks Michael if there's anything he's not telling her. Even though he still hasn't told her that she'll die in 3 months, Michael says there's nothing else to tell her. Dion then asks why he wants to look for the names on his list, even though he mentioned earlier that he recognizes Taser as the guy who stabbed him in the vision he had while he was working. Michael says it's important, but he doesn't tell her anything else. Later that night, Michael sneaks out of the house to find Taser in the estate they met earlier. Michael eventually sees Toozy and Tiny, so he asks for Taser.
Sorry, I just need his number.
The two boys are shocked to hear the delivery guy asking for Taser, so they try to attack him. However, Michael tells them that he doesn't want any trouble. Since he seems harmless, Toozy lets him pay so they can exchange numbers. Before he leaves, some of Chucky's gang members shoot at the boys, so they run away. Michael looks confused and doesn't move, but the rival gang members think he's part of Taser's gang. Michael tries to explain himself, but one of them suddenly shoots at him. As he tries to dodge the bullet, Michael notices that he has frozen time. He then picks up the bullet and disappears from the scene. As he arrives home, Dion sees him appear in the living room, and this shocks her. Before she asks where he went, though, Michael suddenly passes out. When he wakes up, he says he needs to get back to the estate to find Taser, but Dion begs him not to leave because she's scared she might lose him. Following this, Michael promises Dion to drop the case and never go to Taser's estate.
Say it, Michael.
I promise.
After she heads back to bed, though, Michael texts Toozy to inform Taser that they need to meet up as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Toozy and Tiny meet up with Screamer at a parking lot where they're supposed to meet Masher. After waiting for a while, Masher arrives. So Toozy and Screamer go over to meet him to negotiate a deal for his drugs. Unfortunately, Masher doesn't accept their terms, and he sends them out of his car. As they leave, though, they intentionally leave the door open until Masher tells them to close it. Shortly after, Taser appears to his friends and shows them that he has stolen the bag of drugs. Tiny doesn't seem pleased because they didn't tell him the full plan, but Taser assures him not to worry about it.
Hurry up and start the car, man.
After a while, as he and his boys then celebrate, Masher arrives at the estate with his gang to accuse one of Taser's boys of stealing his drugs. Almost immediately, Crazy appears behind Masher and his boys while holding 2 guns. Taser and his boys are shocked to see Crazy because they know he's supposed to spend a long time in jail. Before they say anything, Crazy asks if Taser sent his boys to steal from him.
Trying to rub me, tail.
Taser says they didn't do it, and his boys also insist that they left Masher's car without the drugs. As they continue to deny stealing the drugs, Crazy tells Masher to point out the guy who lined up the deal. Masher immediately points at Tiny, and Crazy then gives him a gun to kill the boy. Before he can do this, Taser tells Crazy to let him and Masher settle the issue one-on-one without the gun. Crazy finds this interesting, so he agrees with Taser's idea. However, instead of letting Tiny fight for himself, Taser decides to represent him. As the fight then starts, Taser beats up Masher and leaves him bleeding on the floor. When he finally stands up, Masher begs Crazy to give him the gun so he can kill Taser. Crazy doesn't do this, but he then smiles and tells Taser that it's good to see he hasn't forgotten the things he taught him. As he walks away, Taser's boys rejoice with him for beating up Masher, but Tiny suddenly gets shot in the process. Taser is shocked by this, and as he looks up, he sees that Crazy took the shot. The gang boss then tells Taser that he would have left Tiny alone if he was the one who actually fought Masher. After he leaves, Taser and his boys help Tiny and take him to a hospital so he doesn't die. The next morning, Dion leaves Michael at home and heads to work. After she heads out, Michael dresses up and decides to go to the future using his powers. Unfortunately, he only ends up inside his delivery van, and as he calls Gabriel to ask for the date,
Bro, just tell me.
his friend confirms that he hasn't moved to the future. Meanwhile, before Dion gets to work, she stops at the house of a woman named Mrs. Amusan to ask about her daughter, Kemi, who has been missing for a while. Mrs. Amusan lets Dion into the house and says that the last time she heard from her daughter, she said something about being unable to leave where she is because she can do things other humans can't do. Dion is shocked to hear this, and as she asks if Mrs. Amusan knows what Kemi meant,
What people?
she says she has no idea. It then turns out that Kemi is actually Taser's mum, and Mrs. Amusan is his grandmother. But Dion is unaware of this, even though she sees their family photo. Meanwhile, Sabrina gets herself scanned to see if there's anything wrong with her. Even though the results show nothing,
Everything's as it should be.
Sabrina looks worried, but she still heads down to continue her job. While she's at it, though, she seems really distracted and makes a few mistakes. As her patients notice this, Sabrina immediately runs out of the ward and hides in the storeroom. While sitting on the floor, her powers suddenly get activated, and she moves the things inside the room without touching them. Shortly after, she leaves work and decides to head home. As she walks quite fast, she nearly gets hit by a car, but Andre saves her. Despite this,
Are you okay?
she doesn't thank him because she's still quite nervous about what happened at work. When she gets home, Charlene sees that she's not looking good, so she asks what happened. Sabrina then tells her about her powers, but Charlene doesn't believe what she's saying. She also asks Sabrina to show her what she can do, but her sister says she doesn't know how to control her powers yet. Charlene then mentions that she thinks Sabrina is just overwhelmed with work. She adds that they can go to a party later that night, but Sabrina angrily refuses. Elsewhere, AJ and Andre hang out again in a public park. On their way home, AJ laughs about something Andre said, and his dad tells him that he actually laughs like his granddad.
Granddad, you know that.
AJ says he doesn't remember him, and he also asks how he died. Andre then mentions that his dad died because he had sickle cell. After a while, Bragg sees AJ entering his mom's house, so he greets the boy. As AJ greets him back, Andre doesn't seem to like this, so he goes to confront Braggs to leave his son alone. Braggs gets pissed and shows Andre his gun to scare him, but the man still warns the gangster to stay away from his son.
Stay away from my son.
Elsewhere, Michael takes his mom to check out Victoria's facility. Victoria looks happy to see them, and she also gets someone to show Tina around. After they eventually leave, Tina tells her son that she doesn't think they can afford the place.
Okay, so what is it then?
But Michael tells her not to worry about it. Tina then asks why her son seems really bothered about something, and he lies that he's only starting to get worried about his wedding. Tina tells him not to worry about it, because she's sure it will be successful. Meanwhile, Taser and his gang go to see Tiny in the hospital, but they can't stay for long because Tiny's mom doesn't seem to appreciate them coming to see her son. As they leave, Tuzi asks why Taser didn't use his powers to save Tiny, and he says it didn't work at the time. Taser then mentions that he'll have to kill Crazy for what he did to Tiny, and his boys agree to help. As they're about to leave the hospital, Tuzi gets a call from Michael and asks Taser what to tell him. However, Taser just tells him to ignore the call.
What we think about right now is crazy, yeah?
Later that night, while the boys are walking around their estate, Michael sees them and runs to stop them. Taser's boys quickly try to guard their boss, but Michael gets past them by teleporting himself right in front of Taser. They're all shocked by this, but as Michael sees Taser's eyes light up, he asks what the boy can do. Taser is still too shocked to speak, but Michael says he needs to talk to him. His boys tell him not to listen to Michael, and he agrees with them. Michael then asks if Taser has met Rodney and the others, but as he notices that the boy doesn't know what he's talking about, he teleports himself away and goes to Gabriel's restaurant. When he gets there, Gabriel looks terrified to see him inside because his shop was closed. Michael then tells him that his powers are real. As he and Gabriel eventually sit to talk, Michael says he's worried that he might not be able to save Dion, but his friend says he trusts him to find a way. Michael then tells him about the failed attempt to convince Taser to help him, so Gabriel asks if he knows any of the others.
Did you recognize any of the others?
Michael remembers seeing Rodney the other day trying to sell drugs, so Gabriel suggests going to the same area because it's likely where the boy is based. Meanwhile, Rodney shows Spud his powers, and his friend looks excited. As he continues running around the room, Rodney falls badly and passes out after banging his head on a table. Spud quickly calls for an ambulance, but he's eventually left shocked to see Rodney's injury healing by itself. After a while, the boys head out to eat, and as Rodney gets an order for drugs, he tells his friend that he'll use his powers to deliver their drugs quickly. Spud eventually mentions that he doesn't think Rodney should be using his powers in public because the government might want to experiment on him. However, Rodney jokes that they won't be able to catch him. Meanwhile, Michael goes to Rodney's base to ask people around where he can buy drugs. He doesn't get the answers he wants, but after staying around for a while, someone finally gives him Rodney's number.
Here, Harlot. Take this number.
Michael then texts Rodney to ask for drugs. Elsewhere, Crazy comes over to Sabrina's house to see Charlene, who happens to be his ex-girlfriend. Charlene looks annoyed at him for taking so long to see her, but Crazy says he had to handle some things first. As they're talking, Sabrina goes over to ask what he's doing at her house instead of being in jail. Crazy then mentions that he had a good solicitor who helped him appeal his case to prove his innocence. He also adds that he only came around to give Charlene a present. As he then gives her an expensive watch, Charlene looks happy and tells him about the party she's going to that night. Crazy says he'll see her there, and as he leaves, Sabrina goes out to warn him that if he ever lays his hands on Charlene like he did before he went to jail, she'll make him pay for it. Crazy finds this funny, but he doesn't say much.
Bad girl, Sabrina.
As Sabrina returns to the house, she tells Charlene not to go to the party again because she doesn't trust Crazy. However, Charlene says she's still going, so Sabrina decides to come with her. Elsewhere, Michael arrives home and meets Dion doing some research about what happened to Kemi and how it could be related to him. Suddenly, Michael gets a text from Rodney asking where he can meet him to deliver the drugs. As Michael sends a location to him, he also tells Dion to stop her research. She doesn't understand this, but he eventually ends up shouting at her to stop. Michael eventually regrets this, but Dion walks out on him. Meanwhile, Andre invites John to a junkyard to show his friend that he has powers. John is shocked by this, but Andre then explains everything that has happened. Shortly after, several cameras in the city pick up Rodney as he's running around. When he eventually gets to the location Michael gave him, Rodney waits for him to show up, but a portal suddenly appears out of nowhere. A hooded guy comes out of the portal, and Rodney looks scared. As he tries to use his powers to escape, he notices that his powers don't work anymore. Before he gets killed by the hooded guy, though, Michael suddenly appears and saves him. As they're about to be attacked again, Michael teleports them to the middle of a party in Gabriel's bar. Meanwhile, Sabrina and Charlene are already at the party. As they sit together, a guy named Kadeem approaches them and seems to like Charlene. After a while, they go out of the club to talk.
It's sexy, you know that.
But Kadeem suddenly gets aggressive, so Charlene insults him. As he's about to beat her, though, Sabrina comes outside and helps her sister. Before they run away, Kadeem's eyes suddenly light up and he flies up. Sabrina and Charlene are shocked by this, so they decide to run away. Almost immediately, Sabrina decides against it, and as Kadeem flies toward her, she uses her powers to throw him against a wall. Charlene is shocked by what her sister just did, but she doesn't say anything. As Sabrina then checks Kadeem's pulse, she realizes that he's dead.
It's good.
Even though she looks terrified and wonders what will happen to her, Charlene quickly tells her that they need to leave. As the girls do this, the shady facility gets an update that Kadeem is dead. One of the agents then checks where he was last seen, and it turns out that despite what happened, the cameras only saw Kadeem leaving the club with Charlene. Meanwhile, Rodney still looks terrified of what happened earlier and suggests that he was set up, but Michael says he had nothing to do with it. He adds that he needs Rodney's help because those guys will keep coming after them because of their powers. Rodney still seems terrified of what happened, and he leaves after saying he can't help Michael, who is left disappointed by this. Meanwhile, Charlene and Sabrina quickly find a cab to take them home. Inside, Charlene asks Sabrina how she was able to do what she did, but she says she can't explain it.
What do you mean it's okay?
She then mentions that she'll have to report herself to the cops before they come looking for her. Charlene doesn't like this idea, and she begs her sister to change her mind. The next morning, after AJ leaves his dad's place for school, some men enter the house to ask Andre to pay up a debt he owes.
Telling you to come out my house, you don't want to listen.
Andre tries to get them to leave, but the men refuse to do so unless they get what they came for. Unfortunately, AJ returns to the house after forgetting his jacket, so he sees the men there. He then asks his dad what the men want, but Andre tells him not to worry about it. As he realizes that they want money, AJ gives them his new phone so they can leave his dad. Andre doesn't like this, and he angrily tells the men to return his son's phone, but AJ says he doesn't need it.
Just let them have it, I don't need it.
Andre looks sad to hear this, but he then goes to his room to bring all the money he has left so that the men can leave his house. Elsewhere, Sabrina leaves a note for Charlene and goes to the police station to report herself. However, as she realizes that the police don't even have a record of any crime in the area, she goes to the front of the club and sees that there's no sign of Kadeem's body. Sabrina then heads home and takes back her note before waking Charlene to tell her that Kadeem might still be alive.
No, there's no sign of a crime scene.
Charlene looks scared because Kadeem could come after them, but Sabrina promises to protect her sister if the man shows up again. Meanwhile, Rodney and Spud invite Michael to meet them at a restaurant. Spud looks excited to see someone with powers like his friend. Michael then tells them about his trip to the future and how he saw the hooded guys there. Spud asks if Rodney had other powers in the future.
What was it like in the future?
And Michael says he remembers seeing him throwing lightning toward a portal. Spud looks happy to hear this, but Rodney says it might never happen because his powers still aren't back yet. Spud then says Michael might have triggered something called the butterfly effect when he went to the future. As Michael asks what he means, Spud says that his trip to the future might have changed some things that are meant to happen. Michael then asks if it can also prevent someone from dying, but Spud says that the person may now die much later or sooner than expected. Michael starts to think about the possibility of Dion living past her death day, but the boys soon mention that they need to leave.
It was nice meeting you.
As they head out, Rodney still says he's not interested in whatever Michael wants to do, and this leaves him disappointed. Shortly after, Andre goes for a job interview, where the employer asks why he has never worked at a place for too long. Andre then confesses that it's because most companies always find out late that he's an ex-convict, even though his only offense was lying.
I've got a criminal record.
He then explains that someone tried to frame him for something he didn't do, but instead of denying it and reporting the person, he decided not to snitch because he thought things wouldn't turn out bad for him. Despite his honesty, the employer still refuses to give Andre a job, and he leaves angrily. Elsewhere, Dion and her colleague go to Jasmine's mom's restaurant to ask how they can help find Jasmine. However, the woman says they can't help her because they don't have any power. She also sends them out of her shop, but Dion seems confused by what she said. Meanwhile, Andre meets John at Gabriel's bar to discuss his failed interview. John then asks why his friend can't break another ATM since he needs money, but Andre says he doesn't want to go back to jail. Despite this, John tells Andre about a stash of money he stumbled upon in a drug dealer's place he went to recently. He then mentions that since Andre hates drug dealers so much, he thinks it will be a good idea to go after their money.
What's up with the cash machine money, though?
Andre has doubts about this plan because they could have guns, but John says he didn't see any when he went there. As they're still talking, Michael arrives at the bar to speak to Gabriel about how Rodney didn't want to help him. Gabriel then suggests that since he knows the others are likely living in the same area, he can trace them by checking the packages meant to be delivered there. Michael likes this idea, so he starts checking the boxes to see if he'll find the rest of the crew he met in the future. Unfortunately, none of the packages leads to anyone, and this leaves him frustrated. Shortly after, Dion's colleague tells her that after going back to see Jasmine's mom, he found out that Jasmine actually calls her parents once in a while. He adds that he tried talking to Jasmine to ask where she is, but the girl only told him that she'll be back home when she's better. Dion finds this odd.
Did she say where she was?
And as she continues her research, she sees a video of a boy with powers saying someone is chasing him. Meanwhile, Crazy invites Taser to the park to discuss a potential collaboration. However, Taser says he's not interested because of what Crazy did to Tiny. He also warns Crazy that the next time they meet, he'll kill him. Crazy is shocked by this, but he acts cool and says he'll kill Taser first. Elsewhere, Andre decides to follow John to scout the drug dealer's place. He ignores his son's call in the process, and as AJ gets pissed, he sees Braggs and asks for a ride home. Shortly after, Andre and John arrive at the drug dealer's den, which appears to be owned by Crazy. Braggs also arrives at the place, but he tells AJ to stay in the car while he goes to bring something inside. After he returns, he gives AJ a bag with drugs, but he tells the boy not to open it yet.
You saying you're trying to make some money?
Meanwhile, Andre and John confirm the location of the money inside a safe. As they return to their car, Andre says he'll come back later that night to steal the safe because it seems like the guys don't have guns. Much later, Charlene tells Sabrina that she's going to Crazy's office to get some drugs. Sabrina doesn't understand why her sister keeps moving around with him, but Charlene says she's just going to get drugs. Suddenly, they hear the doorbell ring, and as Sabrina checks who it is, she sees Michael leaving after he drops off a package for her. As she shouts at him for dropping her package on the floor, Michael sees her and immediately tells her that he knows she has powers. As he shows her his eyes to confirm that he also has powers, Charlene finds Sabrina's note and realizes that her sister was really going to leave her and report herself to the police. She walks out of the house angrily, and as Sabrina follows her, Michael says he needs her help. After the girls stop, he tells them that it's a matter of life and death, but Charlene thinks he's only making things up.
Are you really listening to this guy?
He's chatting shit.
As she then mentions that she needs Sabrina to take her to Crazy's place, Michael begs to follow them so they can talk in the car. Sabrina allows him, so he enters the car with them. Meanwhile, Crazy notices that Braggs hasn't been bringing in enough money as he should. Braggs then complains that there's a new guy who delivers drugs faster. Crazy tells him to deal with the problem, and Braggs says he will. Elsewhere, Rodney decides to take a nap after eating, so when Braggs' call comes in to make a fake order, Spud picks up and leaves to deliver it. When Rodney wakes up, he sees a voice message Spud left for him about where he was going to deliver the drugs. After his friend fails to turn up after several hours, Rodney decides to start looking for him. Meanwhile, Andre calls John to inform him that he's already going to get the money, so his friend wishes him good luck.
You're gonna be fine, you understand? You got this.
Elsewhere, Dots gets a call from an informant who tells him that Crazy is at his drug den. As Taser hears this, he tells his boys that they need to go there and get revenge for Tiny. Despite Michael's efforts to convince Sabrina to help him, she says she can't because she doesn't know him. As he still tries to change her mind to help him, Tina calls him in the middle of her crisis. He looks scared and tells her to wait for him. Before he leaves, Sabrina asks if his mom has sickle cell because her dad had it too. However, Michael just disappears without answering the question. And this leaves Sabrina and Charlene shocked. After a while, they go into the building, and Charlene asks for Crazy. His boys don't tell her anything, but it turns out that Spud is being tortured inside the office. Almost immediately, Taser and his guys arrive and start shooting around. So Sabrina tells her sister that they need to leave. Charlene says she needs to check on Crazy, so Sabrina follows her. Meanwhile, Andre has already arrived and made his way into Crazy's office to pick up the safe. Rodney is also there to help Spud, and as Sabrina and Charlene enter the office, they look shocked to see the others, without Crazy in sight. Suddenly, Taser appears in the room, and as his eyes light up, Sabrina, Rodney, and Andre also reveal the light in their eyes to make him know that they also have powers. However, Taser still points his gun at them and asks for Crazy.
Where's Crazy?
Andre doesn't know what he's talking about, so he tries to leave. Taser shoots at him, but Andre blocks the bullet with the safe. It then deflects towards Sabrina and Rodney, but they also dodge it with their powers. Following this, Andre throws Taser out of his way and leaves with the safe. The others also escape, and as Screamer and the rest of the boys check on Taser, he tells them that Crazy wasn't there.
Crazy one.
Meanwhile, the agents at the Shady facility notice that 4 of their targets met in the same spot. Unfortunately, they only find Rodney, so their supervisor tells them to watch him throughout the day to see if he leads them to the others. The next morning, Spud is in a coma, and Rodney looks scared that he might lose his friend. He then finds Sabrina in the hospital and begs her to help save Spud, but she says she'll only do her best.
I promise you, we'll do everything we can.
Elsewhere, Taser gets a call from Crazy, telling him that he made a mistake to come for him. He then tells Taser to check on his grandmother. Taser is shocked to hear this, but as he runs home, he sees that his grandmother has been beaten up, so he calls an ambulance. Shortly after, Crazy visits Charlene, but when some of his associates arrive at her house, he tells her that she needs to leave. Charlene stops him to ask what he's doing with the people in the Shady car, but he grabs her neck and warns her to stay out of his business.
Care when you're spending it on.
As he leaves, Charlene calls Sabrina to inform her of what happened. She also adds that she's tired of guys thinking they can be rude to her. Sabrina doesn't understand this, but as Charlene ends the call, she takes a knife outside to confront Crazy. Meanwhile, Dion remains bothered by Jasmine's disappearance, so she goes to see the girl's parents. They initially refuse to talk to her.
Order something or leave.
But as she mentions that her fiancé also has powers, Jasmine's mom tells Dion that Jasmine was taken by some shady people. As she asks more questions, she learns that Jasmine's parents found out about her powers when she healed her dad, who had sickle cell. Jasmine's dad also warns Dion that the same people who took his daughter will come for her fiancé. Before she can ask more questions, customers start to arrive at the shop.
When are you going to be open?
so Dion leaves her card with Jasmine's mom. Shortly after, Michael arrives home and decides to tell Dion what he really saw in the future. He also apologizes for how he has been behaving, but before he tells her about her death date, she mentions Jasmine's case and how she thinks it's related. Michael tells her to stop digging into the case, and as he's about to tell her what happens in the future, someone knocks on the door.
When I went to the future,
It turns out to be Rodney. And as Michael talks to him outside, Dion realizes that her fiancé has been trying to find the people on his list despite his promise to her. Meanwhile, Rodney tells Michael about what happened the previous night and how he met Andre and the others. He also offers to take Michael to where they can find Andre. Michael doesn't seem to get why Rodney wants to help all of a sudden, but he eventually agrees to follow him.
wait here.
As he goes inside to tell Dion, she begs him not to leave, but he says it's important. After a while, Michael and Rodney locate John, but he only gives them his number and says he'll talk to his friend first. Shortly after, as Rodney and Michael are waiting for John's calls, the shady agents spot them on one of the CCTV cameras in the area. Almost immediately, Rodney asks Michael if he'll be able to help save Spud.
Yeah, we're helping each other, aren't we?
But he says he's not sure. Michael realizes that Rodney is only helping him for his personal interest, and as they argue about it, he also mentions that he needs help saving Dion. Rodney feels sorry for Michael and he asks if Dion already knows, but he says he hasn't told her yet. Shortly after, Andre calls Michael and they agree on where to meet up.
What you want from me?
Before he leaves his apartment, John tells Andre to open the safe, and as he does this, they discover that there's no money there again. Andre looks quite pissed, and he leaves the house to meet Michael. Meanwhile, Dion gets a text from Jasmine's dad, informing her to come to the shop. When she gets there, he tells her that she needs to help Jasmine if he tells her all that he knows. Following this, the man tells Dion that on the day Jasmine was taken, he found her bag in front of an abandoned building project in a place called Ashington Estate. He adds that before he could do anything, he got a call from someone who threatened to kill him if he didn't walk away. Dion is shocked to hear this, but she says she'll try her best to find Jasmine. Meanwhile, on the way to meet Michael, the hooded guys appear before Andre. Despite trying to use his powers to fight, he gets overpowered and taken away. Shortly after, while Taser and his boys watch Crazy's mom's house to see if he shows up there, someone calls the cops on them.
All right, let's go.
Taser quickly takes their guns and disappears so that his friends won't be arrested for having a dangerous weapon with them. Unfortunately, though, one of them still has some drugs in the car, and this gets them arrested. Taser is disappointed by this, but there's nothing he can do to help them. Elsewhere, Michael and Rodney call John to ask why Andre hasn't shown up yet. John is surprised by this, and he says that Andre left his house over an hour ago. Since they believe he has been taken, Rodney and Michael head to Sabrina's house, while she's worried about her sister, who is nowhere to be found. Despite this, she lets Rodney and Michael into her house. She then tries to call several people to ask for Crazy's number because he might have taken her away. Unfortunately, Sabrina doesn't get Crazy's number, so Michael tells her that they need to act fast because the hooded guys might be coming for them if they already have Andre. Sabrina then asks if they know where Taser is.
Who's the kid with the gun?
But Michael says he doesn't. Shortly after, as Taser is walking home, he gets attacked by one of the hooded guys. Luckily, Taser manages to cut the guy in his leg before he's dragged into the portal. However, another hooded guy comes out to attack him. Before he gets killed with a lightning bolt, Sabrina arrives with Michael and Rodney to help him. As one of the hooded guys throws another lightning bolt at them, Michael freezes time, and the others are left shocked by this. Suddenly, Taser decides to kill the hooded guys, but Michael quickly teleports him away from there. Taser is angry about this, but Michael tells him to calm down until he saves the others. Almost immediately, one of the hooded guys shoots fireballs at Rodney. Unfortunately, his back starts burning, but before they get to him again, Sabrina throws the hooded guys away. As they then stand up and attack her, Michael freezes time and saves Sabrina and Rodney. When they get to Sabrina's house, Michael wonders how they can help Rodney, but his back suddenly starts healing. Sabrina is shocked by this, but Rodney says it's one of his powers. Michael then leaves to bring Taser to Sabrina's house while he's sleeping. As he returns, he meets the others already sleeping, so he finds a spot and decides to take a nap too. Meanwhile, Ray looks shocked to see that the four of them escape. As he sees Sabrina with powers, he also looks angry and blames his agents for bringing the wrong person to him. Shortly after, Michael and the others wake up, but he discovers that his phone is dead. As he asks Sabrina for a charger, Taser attacks him for not letting him kill the hooded guys. Sabrina stops them from fighting, and Michael says he's hoping they can save themselves without killing anyone. He also adds that he thinks the hooded guys are trying to take them to a place he doesn't know yet. Sabrina then asks Taser if he knows where Crazy is.
Do you know where he lives? Where he hangs out?
But he says he doesn't. Almost immediately, Crazy calls Taser and threatens to kill him if he doesn't show up at Ashington Estate later that night. After the call ends, Sabrina asks him what Crazy said, but he refuses to say anything. This makes her angry. But after Michael speaks to Taser, he tells Sabrina where to find Crazy before leaving.
I nearly died trying to save your life.
Shortly after, Jasmine is taken out of her cell to heal Andre. Following this, Ray tells Andre that he has a mutation of sickle cell called supercell. He adds that Andre likely got it because one of his parents had sickle cell. As Andre then asks why he was brought in, Ray says he wants him to become an agent who brings others like him to the facility. He also offers to pay Andre a huge sum that will be able to take care of AJ, so he accepts the job.
So you're helping them?
Elsewhere, Dion goes to the front of the abandoned Ashington Estate project to take pictures. While she's at it, Braggs and some of his guys drive by and try to get her to come with them, but she says she's not interested. Luckily, Michael's phone gets charged, and as he calls her to ask where she is, he hears Braggs shouting at her. This makes Michael scared, but before Braggs can do anything to her, he gets a call from Crazy, so he leaves her alone. When Michael hears nothing from Dion,
Tell me where you are.
he quickly teleports himself inside her car and finds her in front of the estate. They look happy to see each other, and Dion tells him that the estate might be where they take people with powers. As Michael looks around, Dion apologizes for trying to stop him from finding the others. She also says she thinks they should suspend their wedding because things have been quite different between them. Michael feels sad to hear this, and he then tells her about her death date. Dion is shocked to hear this, but she realizes that Michael has been doing everything to stop her from dying.
Michael, you're gonna have to talk to me.
Dion then tells him that she doesn't want to die, and Michael says he's going to do everything he can to make sure she stays with him. Shortly after, Sabrina and Rodney find Ashington Estate and meet Michael and Dion. Michael then tells them that the estate might be where the hooded guys take people like them. Since Crazy is inside there too, Sabrina suggests going in to see if she can find her sister. Michael tells Dion to wait behind, but she says she doesn't want to be alone.
I don't want to die.
He then lets her follow them, but as they get to the front of the estate, they see that it's locked and abandoned. However, as Michael goes closer, he sees that the gate is actually meant to keep people away because there's actually a way through. As they go in, they see drug dealers around, and AJ also appears to be one of them. Shortly after, Crazy arrives, so Sabrina decides to confront him. Michael and Rodney also join her, but they tell Dion to stay back.
All right, just stay in the car, please, yeah?
As Sabrina gets in front of Crazy, she punches him and asks for her sister. This makes him angry, but as he's about to attack her, she uses her powers to throw him away. Braggs also tries to shoot her, but she flings his gun away. This scares him, and he runs away with the rest of the boys. Crazy is left alone, so Sabrina tries to attack him again, but Michael tells her not to do so because he's more useful to them alive.
He took my sister.
As she backs off, though, Taser suddenly appears in front of Crazy with a knife. Sabrina and the others tell him not to kill Crazy, but they're unaware that a portal is opening up behind them. Dion sees this and alerts them, but only Michael leaves to check what it is. Just as Taser is about to stab Crazy, Rodney drags him away, and the hooded guys also show up from the portal and cause an explosion that hits Michael. Diane quickly runs out to help him, but she's eventually knocked out by the hooded guys before they carry Michael. As Sabrina sees the hooded guys behind Crazy, she tells him to come to her side because they're dangerous, but he laughs and reveals that he also has powers. He adds that he can't believe Sabrina and the others thought they were the only ones with powers. As she then asks where Charlene is, Crazy says she has been taken because the agents thought she was the one with powers. While he's still talking, Rodney punches Crazy and removes the masks from the faces of the hooded guys. One of them turns out to be Andre. And while the others are fighting, he carries Michael and tells Crazy to open a portal so he can return to the facility. However, Crazy is more interested in catching Taser, but the boy disappears. As he then calls on his fellow agents to find him the special goggles that will make Taser visible to him, Sabrina sees it and breaks it. She also unintentionally kills one of the hooded agents, and as another one tries to retaliate, Andre tells her to stop because Ray said to bring them alive. However, Crazy and the others just laugh at him because they don't care if anyone dies. Before Sabrina gets killed, though, Taser kills the hooded agent and disappears again before he can be caught. Just then, Crazy and the others open a portal so that Andre can leave with Michael. As he's about to enter the portal, Taser appears again and stabs him. Andre immediately drops Michael, but as Taser is about to kill him, time freezes. It then turns out that Michael has regained consciousness, and he quickly runs to unfreeze Dion so she can leave.
Come on, go.
Be careful!
As he returns to stop Taser from killing anyone, Michael sees that Andre is already with the bad guys. Michael then unfreezes him and introduces himself as the person John told him to meet. He also asks why Andre joined the bad guys, and he says that Ray threatened him with his son. Michael then begs Andre to fight for him and the others. Before Andre makes a decision, Michael's time freeze wears off, and Crazy and his fellow agents get ready to attack Taser. Unfortunately, Taser's powers also wear off, so Crazy gets to him and punches him. Taser lands on Dion's car as she's leaving, but Crazy still follows him there. As he's about to strangle Taser, Dion comes out of the car and tries to stop Crazy, but he punches her. Before Crazy then kills Taser, Andre stops him and throws him away. As another hooded agent is about to come for him, Rodney helps him beat the guy, with Sabrina delivering the final blow to kill him. Just then, Michael checks on Dion and tells her that she'll be fine because he has found the others. However, she sees Crazy standing up again, so Michael tells her to hide in the car. Following this, Crazy offers to help them make their way to the shady facility if they don't kill him. They don't believe he wants to help them, but he says he has nothing to lose. He adds that Taser's mom was locked up in the facility for years, and when she tried to escape, they killed her.
They killed her.
Taser doesn't believe this, but Crazy says he has no reason to lie. He also mentions that the device meant to open the portal is in his back pocket. As Rodney goes to get it, he sees that it's just a phone, but before he realizes what's happening, Crazy kills him. He also goes on to kill the others, but Michael still survives. As Crazy is then about to kill Diane, Michael suddenly finds himself back in time with everyone still again. He also realizes that what he saw was a vision from the future. Following this, he immediately stabs Crazy before he gets up. Sabrina and the others are shocked by this, but Michael explains that he had to kill Crazy before he killed all of them. Interestingly, Crazy survives and reaches for a gun near him to shoot Michael, but Rodney saves him. However, the bullet hits Dion's car, and as Michael runs to check it, he sees that Dion has been hit. He cries for help from the others, but there's nothing they can do, so Dion eventually dies. Days later, Michael invites Sabrina, Rodney, Taser, and Andre to Gabrielle's bar. After they arrive, he thanks them for coming and says he already has a plan. Rodney then asks if it's not too early since he just lost Dion, but Michael says he has already accepted his fate. He adds that he wants to go to the future to find the people behind the shady facility so that he and the others can make them pay for everything they've done. Shortly after, Ray walks past the subjects at the facility while they're all doing different things. Charlene is also in one of the cells, and she looks quite sad to be there. Meanwhile, Ray meets Crazy inside a lab and tells him that he's lucky they managed to save him before he died.
You had maybe one breath left.
Crazy thanks him and apologizes for not bringing Michael and the others as planned. As he says he won't disappoint their boss again, Ray tells him to tell her by himself. Just then, Victoria walks in and sounds disappointed about the failed mission. She also says she can't believe Crazy failed her after all the strings she pulled to get him out of jail. Crazy begs her for another chance, but she says he has run out of second chances. Following this, she instructs one of her guards to kill Crazy while she walks out with Ray, who looks shocked by what just happened. As he then enters the elevator with her, Victoria tells Ray that she'll let him live even though he also failed her. While looking at a picture of Michael, she adds that she'll now take over the mission and do things her way.